Industrial growth is moving beyond Metro Manila, and in Batangas, LIMA Estate is emerging as a model for integrated industrial development. To tell us more about this, we have Monica Trujano of Aboitiz. Welcome, Monica. Let's begin with what makes this stand out. What makes LIMA Estate a strong model for an industrial anchored estate in the countryside?
For Lima, what's different is that our growth, the growth of our estate, has always been anchored on industry first. So for us, industry is what really creates the momentum. When you start with manufacturing and export industries, you're not just developing land. We're not just landlords. We're creating jobs, supporting supply chains, and economic activity as a whole. And that becomes a very strong foundation for everything else that follows after that. And over time in our estate, for example, we've seen all of the downstream demand follow for housing, for commercial centers, for services, and even education right now that we have Batangas State University in our estate. And around all of the industrial base, all of that grows because people naturally gravitate toward where the opportunities are. And so for Lima, we didn't just evolve to where we are today as a traditional industrial park. It grew into an integrated economic center where all of these companies, our investors, can operate efficiently and people can live and work within the same environment. And of course, with that kind of ecosystem, for it to work sustainably, the next key piece then would be ensuring that the infrastructure that we provide or we develop and the systems supporting it are all reliable.
You mentioned a couple of work streams earlier, Monica, but out of everything, which infrastructure would you say is most critical to sustain a hub outside Metro Manila?
Traditionally, when we look at infrastructure, we look at the roads, the bridges, etc. But really, what companies look for, especially global manufacturers, what makes a difference for them in terms of infrastructure is the reliability. So, infrastructure just really isn't just about having roads or utilities available. What we think about is that we want to make sure that power is stable, water systems are secure, digital connectivity is strong, and operations can continue even during disruption. So these investors, these companies can focus on what they do best. And our industrial estates need to function almost like self-contained systems where all of these utilities, all of the estate operations, and even emergency response systems are well managed. And that's something that we do and we provide for our investors and the users of the estate.
So, with that, would you say that industrial estates like Lima can ease congestion in major cities? And if yes, how?
Well, yes, absolutely. It can ease congestion as a residual effect. I think one of the most important thing that we think about when we're developing is job creation. And so when we think about our industrial estates and expanding it and developing it and attracting investors to the estate, we want to be able to bring opportunities closer to where the people already live. So for decades, traditionally, many Filipinos had to migrate to Metro Manila in order to find stable employment. But when you create strong economic hubs like Lima and now Tari in Tarlac, um, when we do this outside of Metro Manila, in the provinces, we are able to give people the option to build their careers closer to home. And so, as I mentioned, we're seeing that happen in Lima, in Batangas. Workers are absolutely finding opportunities within the estate, not just in our manufacturing locators or investors' factories, but also in the first office building that we have built in Batangas, where we already have anchor BPO tenants. And so businesses are growing around the workforce as well that we are able to sustain in our estate. Of course, communities are developing alongside of these industries, thereby creating the decentralization from Metro Manila, especially now when gas prices are so high. Instead of them commuting hours into major cities, we begin to see a more balanced development across regions. And over time, estates like ours become anchors for local economies rather than just places where factories are located.
Now that you've touched on regional growth, what long-term impact can countryside industrial hubs have on this?
Industrial hubs have a multiplier effect on regional economy. So when a major manufacturer locates in an estate, it rarely operates in isolation. Typically, their suppliers, logistics providers, service businesses, and even the residential solutions often follow from companies coming in and establishing their factories in an estate like ours. So what this creates really is industry clusters that strengthen the local supply chains. And at the same time, what happens is there's a strong opportunity to develop the local workforce through partnerships with universities and training institutions like what we have done in Aboitiz. The biggest question is when we bring or attract these manufacturers in, is our workforce ready? Over time, of course, that combination of investment, supply chain development, and the talent growth, especially, builds a very strong regional economic base. And we'd like to think that's really the long-term impact. Regions developing their own momentum on their own.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Monica. We are looking forward to seeing what's next from Lima.
Thank you so much, Sess. I appreciate the time.
Once again, that was Monica Trujano, Vice President and Head for Commercial Strategy and Residential Business Unit at Aboitiz Economic Estates and Aboitiz Land. For more news, visit realestateasia.com.